Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is having a great Monday morning. All right, so I am going to take something that is not only controversial, but it's about controversy. So, do you want to make the world a better place? Well, here is a radical idea. Instead of avoiding controversial concepts, how about we confront them? Now, here's the idea. And this is in contrast to something that's very popular. I often see and hear people say things like, oh, let's not bring politics here, or let's not talk about this at this time. And basically, what you see is that people avoid controversial things, and then what happens is then in other parts of their life and society, it either becomes completely irrelevant or like crazily blown up. So think about all the live issues in politics now. Think about how there's distrust in the media. Think about how people are very polarized, and if you disagree with somebody, then you automatically think they're a bad person, etc. Okay, so um, here's the idea, and this is it's kind of a confluence of several different issues. Um, Here's a quote from Tolstoy from his War and Peace: "If everyone made war only according to his own convictions, there would be no war." What's interesting is it seems that if everybody fought more in a certain way, there would actually be less actual physical fighting. And I think that's right. If everybody wrestled with ideas, that is, as a rational enterprise, then there wouldn't be the same type of reaction or the assumption that it could be solved by a physical means. Now, here are some assumptions that in the background of my thoughts here. Okay, so some things are properly solved intellectually and rationally and voluntary. Okay, that means without coercion. There are other problems that are needed to be solved with violence, which this is not Tolstoy, since he was pretty much a pacifist. But think about somebody breaking into your house, somebody invading your country. It does seem like there are justifications for violence as a defensive measure to protect something that's properly yours, etc. Now, if there are these are different types of problems. Some problems are rational problems that require argument and discussion, and other problems that require a type of violence or coercion or countering coercion. Okay. Now, here's another assumption that's also in the background. Moral and intellectual virtues are like muscles. With practice, they are developed, and with disuse, they atrophy. That's the biggest issue. As a person, if you shy away from controversial topics all the time, not only do you get in a habit of not confronting things that are important, you also get in the habit of not using those muscles, so to speak. Now you can imagine, if the analogy holds, that if you work out regularly, your muscles are going to be in better shape and well-toned. On the other hand, if you avoid the gym because you just think, oh, just going to the gym is just horrible, who do you think is going to be more fit in relationship to lifting weights or whatever type of exercise it is? Okay, obviously it's the person that actually wrestles with it. Now, there are these reasons why you don't want to, bring in politics at your job, the family dinner, etc. And I think those, to some degree, make sense. But in another sense, they don't. And the way that they don't is that if you can't have rational arguments with your friends and family and coworkers, what does that mean? What does that mean for you and your society? And I mean society in a large sense, like nationally, state level, community, but also in your proximate society, your family, friends, your household. If you can't even have discussions about these rational things, then what solves that? You're going to just leave that for other people to solve it. So, for instance, if you can't solve things at a rational, intellectual level, they'll be solved somewhere else. At the legislative level, people will vote. Um, and what I'm really getting at is that not only do we not want our rational faculties to be atrophied, but we also want to develop moral courage to address these things. In addition, we have to have the know-how to address arguments, and that takes rational discipline. It's the discipline to take the argument, separate it from the speaker, make it into premises, see how premises relate to each other, look at the argument, which is independent of the arguer, and it's independent of the party, it's independent of the institution, and looking at those things. Now, if you actually do that normally, like as a regular daily basis, everybody acts differently. It's something that you say, well, let's look at the argument. But there's all kinds of side effects that would happen, I would argue, that if you actually made it habitual for you, your family, our society. If we were more rational creatures, if we were not inflamed by nonsense, then it would be a lot harder to make really bad news because it wouldn't get the attention, it wouldn't get the clicks, it wouldn't get the followings that it does now. So, for instance, if you really know what a fallacy is, and if you know how misleading wording is, and you know how sophistry works, where it's inflaming the passions, it's trying to basically misdirect your attention here, even though there's no logical connection, it's just emotional. If you knew all those things, you would interpret the news very differently, and in fact, you wouldn't support news stations that don't give you, at least relatively unbiased content. Okay, so if we confront controversy on a regular basis, it is true that you're going to be that one person that if you're talking about those things, you are going to be kind of at the front. You're not going to blend into the crowd, and often people want to blend in with the crowd, and I completely sympathize with that. On the other hand, if you do that and it becomes a habit, then you're habituating yourself. You're establishing habits in yourself to not confront the really important matters. And I would argue that most of the things that really matter they're in the moral and intellectual sphere, which is, they can be discussed, they could be argued with. Not only that, you can do it properly by being respectful. You can respectfully talk about things that are deeply important. But I think we don't really understand what that means, and we don't expect our close friends and family to do it. Why don't we expect it? Well, it's because we don't do it. If you look at customs, you can have customs and etiquette established if you actually have the courage and the consistency to put into practice. Now, if you've seen people have very, very important moral discussions, and at the end of the discussion, even though they both maintain that, hey, this is a moral discussion, if I'm right, then that's good. But if I'm wrong, that means I actually have to change my worldview. I actually have to amend my lifestyle if I'm wrong, because that's the implications of a moral discussion. So if you know that, but at the end of the day, you can still say, yes, the person that I was talking to, I still value them as a person. I'm still going to be respectful. And in fact, because I take the argument seriously, I'm not going to attack their personal character. The reason why is because those are fallacious. Like as I've said in a previous videos, bad people can have good arguments. Good people can have bad arguments. You can be quite brilliant and still make a foolish blunder or a misstep in reasoning. And these things should be obvious if we actually acquaint ourselves with, being educated people, regularly engaging in rational discussion. Okay, so the shortest story would basically be we need to confront controversy on a regular basis to develop our moral and intellectual muscles. Okay, and there's actually a ton of resources out there to help us with that if this is completely new. Ideally, we would have learned this in middle school and high school. I fear that typically doesn't happen, but you can remedy that. You can go online. You can do rules for rational discussion. You can check out my website, commonphilosopher.com. I'm developing resources to address these issues, issues that I think could help your life, my life, everyone in society. Okay, and here's three that are very quick. No fallacies. Look up what fallacies are. When you're discussing, don't use fallacies. If somebody else is using a fallacy, a fallacious argument, you can point it out, and you can still be respectful. You also have to remember that just because someone used a fallacy doesn't necessarily mean the conclusion is wrong. It just means that the force of the argument isn't going for their conclusion. Okay. And also respect for truth and right. Like if you can get truth and you can get closer to the truth of what's right and wrong through discussion, then it's in the sphere of rational debate. You can discuss it. You can get closer to the truth. On the other hand, if it's something that can only be settled with might, essentially might makes right, then it's all about political and violent will. Now, I mean, I don't believe that. Some people do. But if you think about what the implications are, if everything is to be settled by might, and it's not in the field of rational discussion, pretty much your feelings are what's right, and it's not something you can discuss. So we discuss 2 plus 2 equals 4, and we follow the rules, and we say, hey, yeah, this fits. But we don't have discussions about I like vanilla ice cream versus you like chocolate ice cream. There's no reason to debate that. Okay, so getting in the habit of addressing things in a rational manner, one, it develops ourselves. It helps us understand what we believe and why. It also develops our moral courage, because anytime you put out your views, you also put out the possibility that somebody's going to think you're foolish, think you're wrong. And moreover, if you give a bad argument and somebody shows that you have a bad argument, it might actually mean that you have to amend your beliefs. Not only that, you might have, if it's on a moral issue, you may have to not only amend your belief, but change the things that you pursue, and may even change your lifestyle. That's what's dangerous about moral discussion, is that you might actually have to change. Somebody may be right and you may be wrong. Now, getting used to those facts, that's very important. Okay, so this is already running a bit long, but I think very short is that we should respectfully cultivate ourselves in a way that we could confront controversy in a respectful, rational way. And if we do that all the time, not only do our children see that, but we develop a society that is capable of doing that. If you look at the news, if you look at videos online, you'll see a lot of, shrieking banshees trying to make an argument, but they're not arguments. They're just shrieking their viewpoints, but not actually giving a rational, substantiated case for it. Now, again, trying to be a rational person doesn't mean that you're always right. But if we all engage in a rational discussion, we admit to certain things, that we can be wrong, that we have a bad argument. We need to figure out what went wrong with the argument, fix the argument. If we're committed to something that turns out to be false, then we are compelled by reason to change our views. If something is right and we previously believed something different that is, inconsistent with what is right, then we have to change. And that's what's scary, But that's the reason, that's the difference between a leader, somebody that has moral courage. Now, I'm not saying that, you become a crazy person and, you spout politics like crazy, like inappropriately. You do it with respect. But I want to point out there is a huge danger of not confronting controversial aspects. And in pursuant to apply these things that I'm telling you, I will be dealing with things like abortion, racism, controversies between socialism and capitalism, all of these things. So stay tuned. If you like what I'm doing, then support my page and check out my website. But if we focus on rational discussion, we seek the truth and understand that we may be wrong, and that if we are shown to be wrong, that we actually have a responsibility to amend our beliefs. And on moral matters, we actually may have to amend ourselves to change our lifestyle. That's the exciting reason to engage in controversial issues in a rational, respectful way. And as we do that, and as our children see us do that, our society will change. It doesn't change immediately, but you know what? Everything that's great in life requires a lot of practice, and it requires a type of leadership. And most people don't want to be in the front. They don't want to be confronted. They don't want to pay the burden of, not being liked. But that's the thing. You could be a leader. You guys can choose to confront controversial issues, which presses you to understand what you believe, why you believe it. Let it be subject to outside forces that may think you're foolish or crazy. These are all good things. See my previous videos on failure and what's the point of a rational discussion. And this is a big topic, so I'll definitely address these in different pieces. in the coming weeks. But thanks for listening. Have a great week. Check out my website, commonphilosopher.com. Definitely support me in any way you see fit to encourage these types of discussions. And if you have anything that you would like me to cover, make sure you give me a comment, send me an email or a message. But this is Monday, so try to go through the week. Talk about something controversial. Try to have a type of suspension of judgment or of discuss things in a respectful way, trying to get at the truth, which is difficult. It's uncomfortable. But if you start doing it, and if you have a society that does that regularly, everybody's going to know more, we're going to be more intelligent, and we're going to try to solve things with our minds instead of solving things with, forcing certain laws that may be tyrannical or maybe shrieking at people incoherently because we somehow think that strengthens our arguments. We will be less less susceptible to ridiculous news programs that always stoke our emotions. In sum, if you try to confront controversy, you will actually make yourself better, the people around you better, and it's going to make you a better reasoner, a better leader, and ultimately I do believe that it'll make the world a better place. So let's try to apply that in some way. I certainly will. You guys have a great week and a great day.